Well, hello. You've managed to land in Thin Air Stuff. Welcome on YouTube.com. In thin air is where so many people who lose things say the things just vanished into thin air. Well, I want to take a ride through the gates of thin air. This channel is dedicated to soaring heights, great discoveries, and finding that which has vanished. And boy, I don't know about you, but I got a lot of stuff that has vanished in my lifetime. Where did that stuff go? Literally disappeared into thin air. Never found again. Even if you tear the house apart when you're moving, things never returned. They gotta be somewhere. Now, where are they? If they, come with me. Let's find out. If we can. Though we're made from the very earth and created in the image of God, the universe is our inheritance. So as we're here on this earth, and we love so much about it, I want to look at the universe and love so much about it with you, with some friends. So if you're into the air, sky high flying, come join me and consider subscribing, and be sure to click the bell if you do. Thanks so much. We'll talk later. And here's a theory I like. Why walk when you can fly? Come on, get on board, people. Let's take a ride to destinations unknown. Are you brave? Are you full of courage? Are you with me? There is risk. Always. Just like what you're about to see. Brace yourself if you're sensitive. I advise your discretion in viewing the video ahead. 2 plane crashes that crash land. I won't spoil the end. If you want to see, look. Thin air is full of all kinds of stuff that happens. Are you ready? Fasten your seatbelts. Shall we go? There's so much to see from above, and there's always more than one way to look at everything, including life and the earth. So here we go. Brace yourself. This video is a bumpy ride, so be prepared. It's a bit graphic too, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Everybody's different, you know? So test the waters before you go in. Thanks. Sensitive viewers, I advise caution. Fasten your seatbelts.
At 3:31 p.m., JetBlue Flight 292 took off with 141 passengers on board. Conditions for the 2,500-mile journey to New York were good.
The flight started really super normal. You know, they give you the, hey, this thing will float, don't, put your tray table up. And it was a very straightforward start to things. I guess it was maybe 15 or 20 minutes into the flight, it became something was up. The pilot came on and said, hey, we're having a little technical difficulty. When he made that announcement, I remembered I had a video camera. So I reached up and I got out the video camera and I started filming from inside the cabin.
Dave recorded events around him. Several rows ahead, close to the front, was fine art consultant Lisa Schiff.
The pilot came on and said, hello everyone. I don't know if you've noticed, but we haven't reached altitude.
20 minutes after takeoff, they were still cruising above California at 14,000 feet.
He said, we're getting an unusual signal about our landing gear. That was a big red flag for me.
People were already stressed. And some people were dealing with it quietly, and other people, there were upsets throughout the cabin.
At 4:20 p.m., they flew past the control tower at Long Beach Airport. hoping to get visual confirmation of the problem. The tower confirmed that the front wheels of the plane were twisted 90 degrees.
Like, you need the landing gear to not crash the plane. Like, that's an important part of the plane. So the fact that that was messed up was scary. I'm in danger.
Things were about to get even more surreal for the passengers. The pilot and air traffic control had been informed that TV news crews had picked up on the story.
Live TV feed from Channel 4 in Long Beach.
Yes, I know I'm on candid camera. They made their presence known.
Flight 292's plight was being broadcast live across the nation. And incredibly, Dave and the other passengers could watch on board.
It's absolutely surreal to be watching the story of the plane that you're in.
Like, it was on national television. It was, and then I clicked, and it's on every station. It's like, this is what they're covering.
Suddenly, the pilot made an announcement.
I've been told by both the company as well as our in-flight crew that apparently we've made the news. I'm sorry about that. I apologize for any apprehension that this is causing you.
They had like every military pilot giving their assessment of what our chances of survival was. I freaked out. Your heart is racing and the adrenaline is going through as if someone is chasing you and trying to kill you.
The Airbus A320 was loaded with 31,600 pounds of jet fuel, which could ignite if the landing went wrong.
At this point, what I'm doing is burning off additional fuel. We took off with a full load of fuel to go out to New York. We're currently drilling holes in the sky around the south part of Los Angeles, primarily to burn the fuel load down to a more suitable level.
We then flew out over the ocean for like 45 minutes. And that silence was really freaky. You start to think about what is going on.
Picture of the people holding hands, I mean, it's a moving moment. I mean, to see people that intensely connected in a high-pressure situation.
Flight 292 had been circling for nearly 3 hours. They hadn't found a way to fix the jammed wheels, but had burnt off enough fuel to try and land at Los Angeles International Airport. Air traffic control contacted the pilot.
What do you think your ETA is now?
We're down to bingo fuel now at this time, Scott. I see 10,000 showing up here. I think it's time for execution. Do you concur?
Concur.
The plane was about to come in for a white-knuckle emergency landing, but the passengers were the last to know.
They turned the televisions off, and that was spooky. What happened? What changed? What are you not telling us?
Hey Barb, it's me. I'm watching the plane on the TV. We're having landing gear problems. We're going to crash land or emergency land. Crash is a bad word in LAX. And they're telling us everything's going to be fine, and it is, but just thought I'd leave you a message just in case. It says I love you. And everything is going to be groovy. Give Bosley a big hug for me. And we'll have a good laugh when I show you this video. You say what a goober I am. But if anything happens, you know, take care of everything. Everything's yours.
I wanted her to know it was okay. That yes, we had a fight, but, you know, it's just a fight. We've been together for a long time. These things happen.
The pilot contacted air traffic control for the final time.
So let's make sure that we've got all of the preparations ready for the arrival into LAX.
I'm sure you'll be a hero here.
Well, that's not the point. I just want to make sure that everyone gets off this airplane okay.
The pilot chose to land at LAX, where the long runway gave him the best chance of success.
Two kinds of dangers there. One, you can have a failure of the main landing gear. That is, it could collapse backwards, the nose of the aircraft could hit the runway. A second is that the heat generated from that scraping on the ground could throw off hot pieces of metal that, if it punctures a fuel tank, could lead to a fire or an explosion.
Brace, 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 brace.
I really wanted my mom. You know, just, I wanted to say goodbye to my parents.
As we come in, when we first felt like we hit pretty hard.
The pilot needed to keep the twisted nose gear off the ground for as long as possible.
You started to smell burning rubber. Intense, thick smell of burning rubber.
I felt heat coming up. I was scared. There might be an explosion.
We're slowing down. And then all of a sudden it got quiet for an instant.
The pilot opened the door and he put his hand up like this. I remember hugging him on the way out. He was so good. I mean, he was a great landing. Oh, wait, that's me. Oh my God, that's me. I've never seen this before. Wow, we are so lucky.
As we're walking down the plane, and I look back, and I look at the landing gear itself, and it is just sawed off, like an absolutely symmetrical half circle. Pretty amazing.
The passengers touched down to a meteor storm. But it wasn't only cameras there for Alexandra.
My husband was there waiting for me. It was just great to see how much he loved me.
An investigation later revealed what allowed the wheel to get jammed out of place. Part of the anti-rotation mechanism had fractured and separated due to fatigue. The Airbus steering system at the time didn't let the crew correct the wheel. This system has since been fixed. All 147 people on board were unhurt, thanks in large part to the skill of the pilot. "27th of March, 2012. Early morning. Security specialist Anthony Antolino was heading to JFK Airport.
It was a normal day, you know. You get up early, kiss the wife goodbye, and get in a car, go to the airport. I was traveling to Vegas for a security conference. That flight was a packed flight full of other executives and folks going out to attend the conference.
JetBlue Flight 191 was scheduled to depart at 6:55 a.m. The 2,300-mile journey to Las Vegas would take 5 hours. Anthony and the other passengers boarded at 6:30 a.m., and everyone prepared for takeoff.
I got on the plane. I was in row 10 in the aisle. Got everything situated, started working, doing emails and what have you.
At 10:30 a.m., the plane had been in the air for just over 3 hours.
Everything was normal until I noticed the pilot came out of the cockpit in a very agitated, abrasive state. I was immediately anxious.
Anthony was so concerned, he began filming what he could see happening at the front of the plane.
The pilot was drinking a lot of water. Those small little airplane bottles, but he was putting them back pretty quickly. He kept wiping his mouth, like spittle or like, you know, stuff building up. You could tell he had an agitated state. His eyes were not really fixed and just normal, and you could see in the faces of the flight crew that they were uncomfortable. There was a lot of awkward looks back and forth between the crew. So I knew that something was not right. What I found peculiar was that when this flight attendant walks away from the beverage cart to attend to a passenger, the pilot reaches across the beverage cart as if to try and grab her and say, "Hey, where are you going? Come back here." That was a startling moment for me.
Anthony watched the pilot walk past him, and for a moment, he disappeared out of view.
The pilot finally went to the back of the plane, to the restroom. He came out of the restroom and proceeded to walk back towards the front of the aircraft. About midway, he started running, a full-on run, straight for the cockpit door. When he got to the cockpit door, he tried breaking into the cockpit. He tried kicking the door down, pounding on the door. I felt like the situation could absolutely turn really, really bad, really, really quick.
Fellow passenger, retired NYPD Sergeant Paul Babakitis, was shocked by the scene.
The worst case scenario running through my head is either the person that was banging on the cockpit door was the pilot or a terrorist.
The flight crew, there was 2 women and a guy. They were no match for this gentleman who was a very large guy. He's probably 6'4", fit. So I took it as the passengers may need to do something to resolve this escalating situation.
To fail to take any action could have dire consequences for everyone.
There was a gentleman, I just kind of tapped him on the shoulder and said, "I think we have a problem." He jumped right up, didn't even ask a question, which was terrific.
As Anthony confronted the captain, other passengers saw something was wrong. Some began to film the confrontation.
Many thoughts were going through my head at that moment, one of which was, what's agitating him? What is he looking for? What is his objective?
We grabbed him and just pulled him away from the door, and we were just holding on to him. He was resisting and struggling a bit.
It was then the pilot started speaking to the passengers.
He looked at me, but as he looked at me, he looked through me. And then he started rambling about Iraq and Iran and talking about military actions and things like that.
He was yelling, they got us in Iraq, they got us in Iran, some mentions of a bomb being on board.
Everyone could see the situation escalating.
And he told me, we're not going to Sin City, and that we have 130 souls aboard the plane. At that point, I realized we're all in trouble.
March 2012, 10:40 a.m. JetBlue Flight 191 was 3 hours into a 5-hour flight to Las Vegas when its captain started behaving erratically. Security specialist Anthony Antolino was one of a few passengers who had gone to confront the pilot.
He said, "It's time to recite the Lord's Prayer." I think that's when the 3 of us that were holding on to him really just kind of locked eyes and looked at each other. Without saying a word, we just literally put him to the ground. We pulled his legs out, put his face to the ground, and then we all stayed right on top of him. Somebody was holding his head, I had his feet, somebody else was holding his arms, and he was resisting, trying to get up, and he was a pretty big guy. So it was a struggle.
Helping Anthony hold down the pilot was retired Police Sergeant Paul Babakitis.
We were able to pin the pilot on the belly of the plane, and restraining him was a very difficult task, because although he seemed docile while he was being restrained, at any second he could become violent, and you have to be prepared for those acts of violence.
As passengers restrained the pilot,
Amarillo, JetBlue 191, emergency.
The co-pilot declared an emergency.
JetBlue 191, roger for now. Just turn 5 degrees to the left, and if you need something different, let me know.
JetBlue 191 emergency, and we're going to need authorities and medical to meet us at the airplane.
Yes, sir, they're standing by for you.
Once we had him on the ground, the crew notified the first officer, and we started a very, very rapid and steep descent. They notified us that they were diverting the aircraft to Amarillo, Texas.
It was announced to the cabin the plane would be on the ground in 20 minutes. Anthony, Paul, and the other passengers would have to restrain the pilot until then.
That 20 minutes seemed like eternity. We just knew we had to keep pressure on this person.
We decided to just stay put and stay on top of him. He tried to get up and struggle a few times, but we just held him on the ground. There really was not much talking. It's interesting in those moments where there's such a heightened sense of danger and adrenaline. There was not much talk at all.
The plane touched down at 11:15 a.m. Waiting outside and ready to board were the emergency services.
The door opened, and I saw a uniformed police officer enter the plane.
With the incident under control, many people began filming.
Please, everybody, please. We don't need pictures of this, please. Everybody just...
A lot of officials came on board. They handcuffed him. We stepped out of the way. They had control of him at that point, and then they took him off the aircraft.
Once he was off the plane, I felt greatly relieved that the threat had been diffused. No one was injured, including the pilot. This was a good ending.
In the aftermath of this event, the actions of the co-pilot were seen as averting a potential disaster. When the captain had left the cockpit in a distressed state, the co-pilot had locked the cockpit door and refused to let the pilot back in.
I feel a lifetime debt of gratitude to the first officer for being able to stay composed, stay calm, and be able to coerce the pilot out of the cockpit so that he could take control and stabilize the cockpit so that we would get somewhere safely.
The FBI took the plane's cockpit voice recorder to investigate whether terrorism or another factor played a part in this incident. The pilot was charged with interfering with a flight crew, but found not guilty due to insanity. The pilot later claimed JetBlue had been negligent and sued for $14.9 million. He said he had been suffering from a brain seizure, which should have been spotted. The case has yet to come to trial.